She said my pond was too noisy, and seconds later, the universe answered her in the most unexpected way. I never imagined a calm morning on my property would explode into a neighborhood spectacle. But that's exactly what happened on the day. Karen stormed toward my pond, with a phone in one hand and a furious mission in the other. The pond, my peaceful, hand-built refuge, featured a small waterfall, drifting koi, and the occasional frog that adopted it as home. Most people found it relaxing, but Karen? She treated it like a personal insult. She approached me with the same energy as someone confronting a criminal mastermind. "Your pond is too loud," she snapped, pointing accusingly at the gentle waterfall as though it were shouting obscenities at her. I couldn't help but blink in confusion. Surely she was joking, but Karen never jokes. She marched straight into a dramatic speech about how the noise pollution from my pond destroyed her ability to meditate and damaged the natural harmony of the neighborhood. I reminded her gently that the pond was fully legal, entirely on my property, and significantly quieter than the traffic she tolerated daily on her own street. But reason bounces off Karen like pebbles hitting steel. She declared she would gather evidence to report me and turned on her phone's camera with the seriousness of someone documenting a crime scene. She moved closer to the pond's edge, angling her phone dramatically toward the waterfall. "Listen to this!" she shouted, as if the soft trickle were a raging tidal wave. She leaned so close to the water she might as well have been trying to interview the fish. I warned her about the slippery rocks, but she silenced me with a sharp flick of her finger. Then karma struck, swift, silent, and absolutely perfect. Her sandal slid on a patch of moss. What followed could have been lifted straight from a slow-motion comedy reel, her arms pinwheeling wildly, her eyes widening in pure panic, her phone tilting helplessly. She stumbled forward, shrieked, and plunged face first into the pond with a splash so dramatic it startled the koi. For a moment, everything froze. Then she resurfaced, soaked, furious, hair plastered across her face like seaweed, still clutching her dripping phone. Naturally, she blamed me, claimed I booby-trapped the area, accused me of failing to warn her properly, as though the pond had plotted her downfall. But the truth? This was only the first ripple. What came after would turn her embarrassment into a full-blown catastrophe. It was only the beginning of her troubles. She had no idea what was coming. Karen stood there dripping like a soggy scarecrow, glaring at me as if my pond had risen up and personally dragged her in. I handed her a towel, more out of basic human decency than anything. But she slapped it away, water flying everywhere. "This is your fault!" she shrieked, shaking her soaked phone like a weapon. "You distracted me while I was filming." I pointed out calmly that I was on the opposite side of the yard and that gravity, not me, had sent her swimming. But logic wasn't invited to this argument. She stormed off, squishing with every step, vowing revenge. I thought that was the end of it. Maybe just another weird Karen moment to laugh about later. Oh, how wrong I was. The next morning, I woke to a pounding on my door so intense I thought the hinges might give out. I opened it to find Karen standing there with a binder. Yes, a full binder, labeled noise violations and nuisance reports. She had clearly been up all night assembling it. Her hair was frizzy from blow-drying. Her phone was wrapped in rice, and her attitude was aggressively caffeinated. "I have documented every instance of excessive pond noise," she declared, "and I will be filing a formal complaint with the neighborhood board." I tried not to laugh, but it came out as an unfortunate snort. She narrowed her eyes. "This is not a joke. The waterfall sound is measured at 3 decibels above the acceptable limit for meditative environments." I asked which law specified meditative environments. She flipped frantically through her binder, but produced nothing except a printed quote from a yoga blog. She shoved it in my face as if it were a Supreme Court ruling. When I still didn't take her seriously, she escalated. Later that afternoon, she returned with a tripod and an old digital camera, apparently. Her phone hadn't survived the plunge. She positioned it near the pond like she was filming a wildlife documentary, complete with whisper commentary. "This is Exhibit A," she murmured dramatically to the camera. "Subject's pond, extremely aggressive water sounds." Meanwhile, the pond was making soft, gentle trickling noises like always. But she didn't stop there. Over the next few days, she recorded at every possible hour. Morning, noon, sunset, even midnight. At one point, she brought a sound meter she clearly didn't know how to operate, waving it around like a metal detector. All her evidence would have remained a personal comedy project until the day she tried to deliver it to the HOA president. And that's when things truly spiraled beyond her control. When Karen marched toward the HOA president's house, binder in hand and determination radiating off her like steam, I figured she'd get politely dismissed. Instead, she got something far worse, for her anyway, because the HOA president Mr. Dalton is the type who loves rules just slightly less than he loves catching someone breaking them. Karen burst into his yard without so much as a knock, startling him as he skimmed his newspaper. "I have evidence!" she announced, thrusting the dripping binder into his lap. The binder slapped down with a wet thud, and several pages stuck to his pants. He peeled one off, frowned at the blurry photos and water-damaged notes, and asked the most reasonable question possible. "Why is everything soaked?" Karen puffed up like a marshmallow in a microwave. "Because his dangerous pond caused me to fall in while I was exposing his noise crimes." Dalton raised an eyebrow. "Noise crimes?" She launched into a full speech about tranquility laws, harmful frequencies, and her right to internal harmony, while he stared blankly, probably wondering if he had missed a major update to the HOA rulebook. When she finished, she folded her arms triumphantly, waiting for him to deliver judgment upon me. But instead he sighed, closed the binder, and said, "Karen, this isn't how any of this works." Her face twisted. "What do you mean?" "This is serious!" He rubbed his temples. "First, there is no HOA rule about pond volume. Second, you trespassed on his property when you fell in. Third, you can't just hand me a soaked binder as evidence. And lastly, did you really use a blog quote as legal documentation?" She sputtered. "It was a reputable yoga instructor." He looked at her like she'd just announced she took legal advice from a horoscope. Then he stood, walked to his mailbox, and grabbed a stack of letters. "Funny enough, Karen," he said, flipping through them. "I was actually on my way to talk to you." Karen blinked. "Me? Why?" He handed her a letter with her name stamped across the top. "Multiple neighbors have filed complaints about your late-night chanting sessions." Her jaw dropped so far I could practically hear the hinges creak. "That is meditation. It's for the good of the neighborhood." Dalton shook his head. "Not when you're screaming affirmations at 2 a.m. Karen clutched the letter like it was a summons to court. And that's when her meltdown truly began. She stomped back toward her house, still ranting. But she didn't get far because the universe had another surprise waiting for her. A surprise involving her broken phone, a misplaced memory card, and a video she didn't know she had recorded. Karen stormed back to her house, muttering about conspiracies, corrupt pond owners, and how the HOA clearly needed her enlightened leadership. I figured she'd disappear for a while and cool off. But less than an hour later, she came barreling across the yard again, this time holding her old digital camera like it was a live grenade. "There's been a terrible mistake," she shouted. I braced myself. With Karen, that sentence could mean anything from "I burned my toast" to "I accidentally declared war on the neighborhood." She stopped right in front of me, panting dramatically. "My camera recorded something it wasn't supposed to," she announced. I blinked. Like, what? She thrust the camera toward me. The memory card had a backup file. A full video of when I fell into your pond. I didn't consent to be recorded in such a humiliating way. I stared at her, utterly confused. "Karen, you were recording yourself. On your camera." She froze, gears visibly grinding in her brain. Well, that doesn't matter. The point is, it captured me in distress, and you must delete it immediately or I'll sue." Before I could respond, she fumbled with the camera, trying to play the video. The moment it began, we both heard it. Her own dramatic commentary. "This is Exhibit A," she whispered in the recording. "The pond is dangerously slippery and the suspect..." Then came the iconic moment. Her scream, the loud splash, and her phone bobbing past the koi like a defeated submarine. She frantically mashed buttons to stop the playback. I couldn't help it. I laughed. A real, uncontrollable laugh. And that only made her angrier. "This is not funny. If anyone sees this, my reputation will be ruined." She said it like she was a public figure whose career depended on her dignity. Before I could reassure her, a familiar voice called from behind us. It was Mr. Dalton, the HOA president, holding his own phone. "Karen," he said calmly, "you accidentally emailed the video to the HOA group chat." Her face drained of color faster than water draining from a bathtub. No! That was a draft folder. A private folder." Dalton shook his head. "You attached the wrong file. Everyone saw it." I swear the silence that followed could have powered a small generator. Karen let out a slow, trembling inhale. Then she bolted, actually ran back toward her house, tripping once more but catching herself before another watery disaster. For weeks after, the neighborhood enjoyed peace. No complaints, no binders. No chanting at 2 a.m., Karen stayed inside, avoiding anyone who might have witnessed her pond debut. And my pond? It kept right on being too noisy, just the way I like it. If you enjoyed this crazy Karen moment, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next wild HOA story. Drop a comment below and tell us what you would do if this happened to you. And don't forget to give this video a like to support more shocking stories.